I mentioned this metaphor of Lance Armstrong's bicycle this morning, and I don't think that it makes sense to try to be more formal and more precise here and get this off the ground, get it off the ground simple, and then you can think about whether you need to make it more formal and precise. So what I want to do here is just simply give you an overview of what your options are to upgrading to Lance Armstrong's bicycle. You know, over time, if you decide well, we need to be more formal, we need to be more precise, how can we do that? What are the costs and the benefits associated with these different options? Then you'll be aware of them. Okay. So I've referred to this technique as we've just gone through as an informal quality risk analysis technique. Now some people say, well, informal doesn't quite sound right because that means that there's nothing produced at all. So one of my course attendees once said, you should call it the pragmatic risk analysis and management method. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, PRAM, that's great. So think of it that way. Put your software baby in the PRAM, right? But that's what I'm talking about here when I say starting with and ideally sticking with the informal quality risk analysis technique. And the reason I say sticking with it is I've been doing this risk-based testing for quite a while now, since the mid-90s. And when I started with what was out there. And what was out there was failure mode and effect analysis and some of the more really formalized techniques. And I mean, you could do it, and we did it with clients, but it was a lot of work. And I think the overhead, effort, just too high for most of the projects. That technique that we've just gone through, the one that was illustrated and implemented in the case study, is just about the best to me in terms of the balance between the power of the technique and what you're going to pay to get that. I've looked at that approach, and anything that I would take away from that to make it even more lightweight would break some of the important benefits that I would want to get out of risk-based testing. So I can't think of any way to make that any simpler and still get the benefits. But as you add this other stuff on top of it, it ends up being harder to learn, more expensive, more overhead. And you might say, oh, well, how much more? Well, maybe like 5 to 10 times more. I mean, it's really significant. So I'm going to go through this stuff with you, but not from a point of view of trying to fire you up about going there someday, okay? But rather just so that you're aware of those options. What I usually say to clients and training attendees about this is that if anybody contacted me and said they wanted RBCS to come in and help them get started doing failure mode and effect analysis, the first thing I do is try to talk them out of it and talk them into going with this more lightweight approach because it is that much harder.